The text from my mother came at 7:14 a.m. No good morning, no context. Just 4 words on a gray bubble. We no longer trust you. I stared at the screen longer than I care to admit. Not because I was shocked. I'd seen this coming in 100 small ways, but because of how official it sounded. Cold. Practiced. Like a company email terminating an employee, not a message from the woman who raised me. I typed 1 word back. Understood. Then I put my phone face down on the counter, finished my coffee, and went to work. 2 days later, a lawyer I'd never met started calling my phone on repeat. Urgent. Time-sensitive. Her voice suddenly very careful. That's when I knew this wasn't over. Before I tell you how it all unfolded, tell me where you're listening from, and let me know in the comments if your own family has ever shut you out like a stranger. Because if they have, you'll understand exactly why this story matters. My name is Hazel. I'm in my early 40s now, and for most of my adult life, my role in the family could be summed up in 3 words. I handled it. I've always been the steady one. The reliable paycheck. The one with decent savings. The one who shows up on time, pays on time, fixes things before anyone else notices they're broken. I don't flash wealth. I don't talk about money. I don't post vacations on social media. I just took care of things. Growing up, I learned fast that in our house, love and responsibility were tangled together. If something broke, I found the tools. If a bill arrived with that red past due stamp, I lent money that was rarely repaid. If an argument started at the dinner table, I was the one cracking a joke to change the subject or getting up to clear plates early. My mother, Diane, liked to tell people how proud she was that I was so independent. She'd say it with this shining smile, like she'd given birth to a fully grown adult who required no maintenance. But the praise always came with an invisible clause. Because I could carry more, I should. And because I was the oldest, I always would. My father's contribution to family conflict was absence. He sat at the head of the table, read the paper, nodded when decisions were announced, and rarely, if ever, asked how those decisions were being paid for. His silence was presented as keeping the peace. Then there was my younger sister, Marissa. If I was gravity, she was weather. She was bright, charming, always in some kind of crisis that no one could have predicted. Jobs that weren't the right fit. Bills that showed up all at once. Plans that almost worked out. My parents lived in a constant state of worry over her. I was told to be patient, to be understanding, to remember that family helps family. So I did. For years, I took care of the money problems no one wanted to look directly at. I paid for repairs when the roof leaked. I covered the insurance premiums when my dad forgot to send them in. I sent money when the furnace went out, when the car needed brakes, when a medical bill came in higher than expected. No one sat me down and asked. They just mentioned the problem out loud, and then looked at me. And I responded every single time. I told myself that's what being a good daughter meant. That this was how you prove you're not selfish. That someday, somehow, it would be noticed, even if it was never said. From the outside, we looked fine. Normal even. Holiday dinners with matching napkins. Group photos with everyone squeezed in and smiling. Conversations that stayed safely on the surface where nothing was sharp enough to cut you. Underneath all that, though, something was off. I wasn't included in decisions. I was informed of them after the contracts were signed. When something went well, it was we did it. When something fell apart, it somehow landed squarely in my lap. I didn't realize how deep that imbalance ran until the text message. Until 4 words made it abundantly clear that my place in the family was conditional. Conditional on one thing. My usefulness. Looking back, the signs had been there for years. I just kept choosing not to read them. Because as long as I kept saying yes, I could pretend it meant I mattered. The shift didn't come as one big dramatic betrayal. It crept in. A charge on an account I hadn't authorized that didn't seem to match anything I remembered. A bill I knew I'd paid suddenly reappearing because there was some confusion. Every time I asked, I got variations of the same phrases. It's a one-time thing. We'll sort it out next month. Don't turn this into something huge, Hazel. So I stopped asking. That was my first real mistake. A few weeks later, I was standing in line at the grocery store, scrolling through my phone to kill time. That's when I saw the photo. My parents in front of their house, all smiles, like they'd just been handed a prize. Marissa in the middle, arm threaded through my mother's, her kids in perfectly coordinated little outfits. The caption read something like, "New chapter. So proud of all the hard work and sacrifices. New beginnings for the family, thanks to this amazing woman." Heart emojis. Clapping hands. "You deserve it, girl. Your family is so lucky to have you." Comments poured in about how strong my sister was, how she was holding everything together, how inspiring it was to see a daughter step up for her parents. My name wasn't anywhere. Not in the caption. Not in the comments. Not even a "we couldn't have done this without everyone's support." I read it twice, then a third time hoping I'd missed something. I hadn't. I paid for my groceries, put my phone away, and drove home with that familiar knot between my ribs. The one that said, "You're overreacting. It's just a post. It doesn't mean anything." Except it did. After that, the family group chat started to feel different. There were jokes about how some people have it so easy, always landing on their feet, followed by laughing emojis. Someone wrote, "Must be nice to know you've got support no matter what." Another person reacted with a string of clapping hands. No one said, "Hazel." They didn't need to. I typed and deleted at least 3 responses. I didn't want to be too sensitive. I didn't want to ruin the mood. I knew exactly how it would go if I spoke up. So I swallowed it. Again. The day things finally snapped was a quiet one. I was at my parents' house, doing what I'd done 100 times before, taking care of little things that weren't actually little. A squeaky door. A leaky faucet. Clearing out mail piles that had been ignored. The back door to the kitchen was propped open. Voices drifted out. My mother's voice, low and sure. Marissa's laugh, light and unconcerned. They weren't whispering. "Once it's all finalized, everything will run so much smoother," Marissa was saying. "No more confusion." My mother made a sound that almost passed for relief. "I'll sleep better when it's settled," she said. Then my sister said the sentence that stopped me cold. "She's not really family," she said. "She's just the sponsor." No anger. No shame. Just a plain, flat certainty. My mother didn't correct her. She didn't say, "That's your sister." She didn't say, "Don't talk about her like that." She didn't say anything. I stood there in the yard, fingers still wet from the hose, and listened to them move on to the next topic like they hadn't just taken a scalpel to my chest. I didn't burst in. I walked calmly out the side gate, got into my car, and sat there gripping the steering wheel until my hands stopped shaking. In that silence, something finally broke. Not my love for them. I honestly don't know if that ever fully breaks. What shattered was the story I'd been telling myself. That I was part of the core unit. That I was seen as more than a bank account. That all the years of stepping up meant I belonged. I wasn't a daughter in their structure. I was a resource. A sponsor. And once I saw it that clearly, I couldn't unsee it. I didn't confront anyone that day. No carefully worded text. No late-night phone call. Instead, I did something that felt completely new for me. I went quiet. Not the old kind of quiet, where I disappeared emotionally but kept doing everything. A different kind. The kind that steps back and watches. That night, I sat at my own kitchen table with the lights off. The only glow in the room was from my laptop. I logged into my accounts and started pulling records I hadn't looked at carefully in years. Mortgage payments. Insurance premiums. Utility bills. One-time transfers that had quietly become recurring. Each line item was like reading an old diary I didn't remember writing. Month after month. Year after year. Always my account. Always on time. I didn't feel rage. I felt focused. I created a folder and started saving everything relevant. Not frantically. Not like a person in crisis. Like someone finally doing an audit of her own life. When something didn't add up, I flagged it and moved on. I wasn't trying to build a case in my mind. I was trying to see the shape of the truth. The more I looked, the clearer it became. This wasn't me occasionally helping. This was them quietly building their stability on the assumption that I would always fill the gaps. Not generosity that had gotten a little out of hand. Dependence that had been normalized. A few days later, I booked an appointment with a lawyer. I didn't call it a family emergency. I didn't start with, "My mother hurt my feelings." I asked specific, cold questions. What happens when someone uses your financial information without explicit consent? What protections exist if relatives assume control over shared assets? What are my options if I've been carrying debts that were never mine? I listened more than I spoke. I took notes. I didn't tell her everything. I told her enough. When I hung up, I realized something strange. I felt calmer. I slept that night without waking up to check my phone for the first time in weeks. The next morning, the text from my mother landed. "No hi, no explanation. We no longer trust you. Access revoked. Locks changed. Codes updated." It read like a policy memo. I wrote back. "Got it." Then, just like before, I turned my phone face down and went about my day. But this time, something fundamental had shifted. I wasn't reacting. I was deciding. I didn't immediately cancel what I was paying for. I didn't fire back some big speech. I let the usual automatic payments run for a few more days while I finished organizing. I collected emails that made their expectations crystal clear. Screenshots of group chat messages that treated my help as a given, not a question. Notes from calls where I'd been told after the fact about decisions that have already been made. By the end of the week, everything I needed was sorted. Not to wage war. To protect myself. To finally pull back what had been taken drip by drip under the guise of family obligation. I looked around my apartment and noticed something that stung more than any of the texts. Very little of my life actually felt like it belonged to me. Even my free time had been carved up by other people's emergencies. That realization hurt. But it also sharpened me. I wasn't plotting revenge. I was drawing a boundary. One that should have been drawn years ago. And for the first time, I was ready to stand behind it without flinching. 2 days after my mother's "we don't trust you" message, an unknown number started spamming my phone. I ignored the first call. And the second. And the third. On the fourth ring, I answered. The woman on the other end introduced herself as an attorney representing my parents. Her voice was overly polite, each word chosen with care, like someone trying not to set off a bomb. "There seems to have been a misunderstanding," she said. "Your parents are very upset. They would prefer to resolve this quietly, within the family. Would you be willing to meet?" "I'm busy," I said. A beat of silence. "When might you not be?" she asked. That question told me everything I needed to know. 2 days earlier, I was someone they could lock out with a text message. Now, suddenly, they needed my time. My consent. My cooperation. I didn't commit to anything on that call. We hung up without a date or location set. An hour later, another message from my mother arrived. Longer this time. She wrote that she was heartbroken by my distance. That family business should never involve lawyers. That bringing outsiders into private matters was a betrayal. She said we could talk like adults if I'd just come over. I didn't respond. The actual confrontation did not happen in a sterile office. It happened exactly where family illusions are strongest. At a gathering dressed up as a celebration. It was my cousin's engagement party. Soft lighting. Background music. Folding chairs draped in white covers. People laughing a little too loudly, eyes sliding past tension because everyone agreed, without saying it, that as long as you pretended not to see it, it didn't exist. I arrived late on purpose. When I walked into the rented hall, conversations dipped but didn't quite stop. A few relatives smiled too brightly. Others pretended to be very interested in the food table. My sister glanced up from across the room, went still for half a second, then looked back at her phone. My mother's shoulders stiffened, but she didn't turn around. My father stared down at his drink as if it had just given him bad news. I didn't go on a hugging tour. I didn't sit down. I stood off to the side and waited. Eventually, my mother rose from her chair, smoothed her blouse, and cleared her throat in that way she always did when she wanted to steer a situation. I didn't let her. I didn't come here to fight. I said, my voice clear but not raised. I came to be explicit. The room quieted. I walked over to the long table where my parents were sitting. The family lawyer was there too, perched on a chair at the end, legal pad in front of her like a shield. I set a thin folder down on the table. Not slammed. Not thrown. Just placed. For a long time, I began, I've been paying for things related to this house, this family, this life. I looked at my parents. The mortgage. The homeowner's insurance when it lapsed. Utilities when they were a little behind. Repairs when pipes burst or appliances died unexpectedly. Medical bills when coverage wasn't enough. I wasn't asked to. It was just assumed that I would. My sister gave a short, disbelieving laugh. You're being dramatic, she said. You helped a few times. Don't act like you funded our entire life. I slid the folder toward her. That's a summary, I said. Rounded numbers. Just dates and totals. She didn't touch it. These were gifts, my mother said sharply. You wanted to help. We never forced you. I nodded once. If they were gifts, I said calmly, there would have been conversations. You would have asked. I would have agreed. That's consent. I looked at her. You never asked. You just expected. The lawyer shifted in her chair. I went on. I talked about how my bank logins had been saved on their computer without my permission. How my credit had been used to secure better rates. How major financial decisions were made and then I was informed, not consulted. I didn't call anyone a thief. I laid out patterns. Then I said the sentence that stopped the low background chatter entirely. I know how you talk about me when you think I'm not around. My sister's face lost all its color. I didn't repeat her words right away. I let the room sit with that thought. After a long, heavy pause, I said them once clearly. She's not family. She's just the sponsor. Someone in the back sucked in air. A chair creaked. My mother opened her mouth, then closed it again. You didn't correct her, I said softly. That's not what she meant, my father blurted, finally lifting his head. I know exactly what she meant, I replied. Because I've seen what she's allowed to mean around you. The lawyer leaned forward slightly. Hazel, maybe we should step aside and… I am stepping aside, I said. Right now. For this. I took a breath. Here is what will happen next, I said. I'm not threatening anyone. I'm outlining a process. I told them I had documented the payments I'd made. That I had copies of account changes. That there were voice memos and texts where financial access was treated as their right, not my choice. I said I wasn't interested in humiliating anyone publicly, but I was interested in being repaid. My sister shot to her feet. You can't do this, she hissed. You'll destroy everything we've built. I met her eyes. It's already destroyed, I said. I'm just refusing to keep subsidizing the rubble. My mother's eyes filled. She drew in a shuddery breath and turned on tears like a faucet she knew how to control. She talked about how she had sacrificed as a mother. How much she had given up. How families don't keep score. I never kept score, I said quietly. I glanced at the folder. You did. When you called me a sponsor. The lawyer asked if we could speak privately. Somewhere quieter. I agreed. We stepped to a corner of the room, away from the stairs but not out of earshot. They are willing to make things right, she said in a low voice. We could negotiate a settlement, keep this within the family, avoid any escalation. I'm not looking for quiet, I said. I'm looking for complete. She hesitated. That may take time. It already took nearly a decade, I replied. I've been extremely patient. Her eyes flicked to the folder. You have documentation? She asked. Yes. Backups? She pressed. Yes. Recordings? Her voice dropped further. I held her gaze. Yes. And if this case becomes public? She asked slowly. I can't control what other family members say or do, I said. I can only promise that when I'm asked a direct question, I will answer truthfully. For the first time, I saw a real panic flash across her face. She excused herself to make a quick call. Across the room, my parents and sister sat frozen. No one tried to come over. No one asked me to sit down. They looked like people realizing they'd been walking on a bridge they never inspected, and now they could hear it creaking. When the lawyer returned, her tone had shifted. Measured. Respectful. "They'll need to review everything," she said. "But they are prepared to reimburse you the full amount. There may have to be some adjustments to assets to make that happen." "That's their side of it," I said. "On mine, there's one more condition." She lifted her pen. "Go on." "After this is resolved," I said, "they do not contact me again. Not through you. Not through relatives. Not through friends of the family. No more access. No more surprises." She was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. "I'll relay that," she said. As I turned to leave, my mother called my name. I stopped but didn't go back to the table. "You didn't have to do all of this," she said quietly, voice trembling. "Not like this. Not in front of everyone." I looked at her. "Neither did you," I said. Then I walked out. No one followed me. The night air outside felt colder than usual, but it was the clean kind of cold. Like after a storm has finally passed. Ugh. 3 days later, the lawyer called. Her voice was all business now. "The total amount will be returned in full," she said. "The transfers will be processed by the end of the week." "Good," I said. "Is there anything else you're asking for?" she added. "There is," I said. She waited. "No more contact," I repeated. "That includes guilt messages, long explanations, or third-party messengers. I'm done being part of their system. I'm not available for it anymore." She exhaled once, slowly. "I understand." When the money finally hit my account, there was no note attached. No "we're sorry." No "thank you for everything you did." Just numbers changing on a screen, correcting a long-standing imbalance. People assume a big moment like that will feel like victory. It didn't. It felt level. Like a picture frame that had been hanging crooked for years, finally being straightened. They said they didn't trust me. In the end, that didn't matter. Because I had trusted something more reliable than their opinion. Documentation. Facts don't argue. They just sit there, quietly, telling the truth. In the days that followed, I started packing. Not in a frantic, I have to get out scramble. Carefully. I chose what came with me and what stayed behind. Not just objects. Habits. I left the instinct to answer every call. The reflex to open my banking app every time a relative's name appeared on my screen. The constant, low-grade guilt that hummed in the background of my life like static. I found a small apartment in another city. Nothing fancy. White walls, too much light in the mornings. A balcony barely big enough for a chair. It was perfect. No one knew my last name when I signed the lease. No one knew my parents. The family group chat disappeared from my phone one day without announcement. No new group took its place. At first, the silence felt wrong. Like walking into a room that used to be filled with noise and waiting for someone to suddenly shout. No one did. Days went by. I started noticing things I'd been too overwhelmed to see before. How long evenings actually are when they're not punctuated by urgent texts. How much headspace opens up when you're not budgeting for other people's decisions. How good food tastes when you're not swallowing it between crisis calls. I slept through the night. Woke up when my own alarm went off, not someone else's emergency. No emotional monologue arrived in my inbox. No, we didn't mean it, or you misunderstood. They didn't try to fix what they'd broken. That was my final answer. Closure didn't come from a family summit. It came from clarity. People ask me sometimes if it hurt to walk away. The truth? It would have hurt more to stay. I didn't lose my family. I stopped financing a version of family that erased me. In the quiet that followed, I realized something I wish I'd understood 20 years earlier. Peace doesn't always show up hand in hand with forgiveness. Sometimes it comes wearing a different outfit. Distance. And it stays not because you're stubborn or bitter, but because you finally earned it. I used to think family meant who had unquestioned access to you, who could call at midnight, who you'd empty your account for without thinking. I was wrong. Real love isn't measured by how much of yourself you're willing to burn to keep everyone else warm. It's measured by whether they still see you when you stop burning. I didn't lose my parents and my sister. I lost the illusion that their constant need was the same thing as affection. If this story sounds uncomfortably familiar, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what part hit you the hardest. You're not the only one who's ever been treated like a sponsor instead of a sibling. And if stories like this help you feel a little less alone and a little more justified in protecting your peace, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one.